Good morning everyone, welcome to my very first video on this channel, video essay. In today's video I will discuss Monkey Beach, a 300 something page novel by Eden Robinson, in which I spent probably around a month to finish. I say it's worth it though, and I'm going to tell you why. Fun fact, this novel has its own movie adaptation, which, believe it or not, isn't as good as the novel, so we're not gonna discuss it here. But there are some interesting scenes that is too good to not be used in this video, so don't mind if I do. So, what is this novel about? So Monkey Beach by Eden Robinson is a powerful and multi-layered novel that weaves together themes of family, indigenous culture, spirituality, and personal struggle. Set in the Haila community in British Columbia, Canada, the story follows Lisa Marie Hill, a young indigenous woman coming of age amidst personal and cultural challenges. The novel is framed around a mystery. Lisa's brother, Jimmy, has gone missing at the sea. As she grapples with his disappearance, the narrative moves between past and present, blending realism with elements of indigenous spirituality and mysticism. Throughout the book, Lisa navigates a complex web of emotions tied to her family's past traumas, her struggles with her cultural identity, and her connection to the spirit world. Her interactions with her family, particularly her mother and grandmother, highlight the strength and resilience inherent in the indigenous women and their role in preserving their family tradition. Now, the setting of the Haila community serves as a vibrant backdrop, immersing readers in the cultural richness of indigenous traditions, folklore, and natural beauty of the island and sea. Monkey Beach is a poignant exploration of loss, grief, identity, and the interconnectedness of the physical and spiritual worlds. Through Lisa's journey, the novel delves into themes of ancestral knowledge, the impact of colonization on indigenous communities, and the ongoing struggle to reconcile tradition with modernity. Now, if I were to oversimplify this novel, I'd say trauma-filled horror novel that actually depicts a good female protagonist and a good Indian woman at that, which makes you think what's real and what's not after you finish it. We will discuss this novel in three aspects: psychoanalysis, gender dynamics, and post-colonialism. We will discuss this novel in two aspects: psychoanalysis and gender dynamics. So, Eden Robinson's Monkey Beach has a woman as their protagonist, Lisa Marie Hill, or we can just call her Lisa. Lisa is surrounded by important female figures in her life. These characters deal with difference of power between them and male members in the family. In Monkey Beach, the gender dynamics are prominent in Lisa's, Erica's, Mama O's, Cookie's, Karaoke's, and Gladys' story. The gender dynamics in Monkey Beach are present in these scenes. I noticed a car following her. A young white guy stuck his head out of the passenger's side of the car and invited her in. They showed her a good time. All three guys in the car were wearing black baseball caps and sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. I couldn't tell what color their hair was, and there was mud all over their license plates. One of them had a black mustache, and it was obviously fake. Erica turned on her heel and walked back towards me. They pulled a U-turn, and the driver called out that he'd teach her how to fuck a white man. Yeah, I yelled out. With what, you dickless wander? The car stopped 10 feet away from me. Hey, looky, we got a feisty little squaw on our hands, the driver said. And another quotation is, no you don't, Baba O was an asshole. He beat Gren instead of sending him away. She sent Mick and Mom to residential school. And, God, you can be so dense, she said. Another quotation. Cookie, his wife, what about her? Do you know what happened to her? His face lost all expression. Someone tied her up and put her in a car, and they set it on fire. It was the way to hell in the middle of nowhere. The police said it was a suicide, and the FBI. I asked, this is another quotation, I asked Karaoke about it later and she comfortably said it was meant as a joke. Jimmy was never supposed to find it, but she wouldn't look at me and she left a few minutes later. Jimmy picked it up the same way I had. The folded up note card was a birth announcement. On the front, a stork carried a baby across the blue sky with fluffy white clouds. It's a boy, was on the bottom of the card. Inside, in neat, careful handwriting, it said, Dear, dear Joshua, it was yours, so I killed it. And then another quotation. When I heard Meek's speedboat coming in, I walked back to the house. Mom never lit into me as badly as Meek was there. I steeled myself for the big lecture, but when I got inside, she didn't even look back at me. She was frying corned beef. Meek was sneaking up on her, and I stepped back onto the porch so I wouldn't ruin the surprise. He came up behind her and circled her waist with his arms and gave her a gentle kiss on the neck. She pulled his arm off slowly and then pushed him away, eyes downcast. Now, in Monkey Beach, we know that the Indian women are expected to be submissive toward the male. Both non-Indian and Indian men. In front of white men, Indian women cannot do anything to protect themselves, and if they are in danger, no one will care. Indian men sometimes treat the woman poorly without facing any consequences whatsoever. Lisa was almost about to be assaulted when she stood up for Erica against white men who were trying to rape her. There is also a part where she gets raped by her friends. Not by her friends, but by one of her friends, Cheese. Mama O was treated poorly by her abusive husband, which affected their children, Aunt Trudy and Uncle Mick. Yet she could not do anything other than sending them to residential schools. Cookie was in a rally with Uncle Mick, protesting against injustice towards Indians. She was implicitly stated to be murdered by the authorities on one of the rallies in her car. Karaoke was raped by Josh and could not do anything to help herself. Gladys part, though mentioned briefly, also showcases different power dynamics between male and female when Uncle Mick sexually harassed her. In the end, each of the characters deals with their circumstances in their own way, as shown in these quotations. Lisa, Aunt Trudy said, "You got to be more careful." About what? Those guys would have killed you. It was broad daylight, I said, and there were tons of witnesses. They wouldn't have done anything. Honey, she said, if you're some little white girl, that would be true. But you're a mouthy Indian, and everyone thinks we're bone sluts. Those guys would have said you were asking for it and got off scot-free. No, they wouldn't. Facts of life, girlie. 2 weeks before Karaoke come back, I had a dream about Mama O. I saw her sitting at her kitchen table. She had a dark purple bruise covering her left cheek and smaller bruises on her arms. Baba O was singing in the shower. A thought came from the bathroom, and then there was silence. But instead of moving or asking if everything was all right, she sat and gripped her mug of tea tightly between her hands. I heard the sound of water hitting the tub and shower curtain. Nothing's wrong, she whispered. Even when the water seeped under the door, nothing's wrong. So Lisa is a bold girl. She always tries to stand up for herself against anyone who is in her way, including white men who have the higher ground in society. Aunt Trudy has to remind her that she is an Indian girl. No one would care if she got hurt. Mama O stayed home with her husband until one day her husband died in the bathroom. Mama was already sick of him, so she let him drop dead, knowing full well that she could have helped him if she came to the bathroom quickly. That is the only way she could see herself getting out of her abusive household. Karaoke, despite being unable to undo the rape Josh has done to her, decides to get an abortion and starts her life anew with Jimmy. In a lot of instances, the male characters assert their dominance over the female characters, but the female characters seem to try to fight with all their might, standing up for themselves in the end, though whether or not the ending is a happily ever after ending or not is up to debate. Next is psychoanalysis. Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory defines the unconscious mind as a reservoir holding feelings, thoughts, urges, and memories beyond conscious awareness. The contents of the unconscious, according to Freud, are largely comprised of unacceptable or distressing emotions like pain, anxiety, or resolved conflicts. Despite being unnoticed, the unconscious influences behavior. Now, analogs to an iceberg, the conscious mind represents the visible tip, while the unconscious lies submerged beneath. Similarly, most of what shapes our behaviors and thoughts dwells beneath the surface, outside conscious perception, but exerting significant influence. Unconscious elements, Freud argued, lead to various issues like anger, biases, compulsive behaviors, social difficulties, distress, and relationship problems. Freud believed that such hidden desires and instincts often surface through dreams and unintentional slips of the tongue. Basic instincts and urges, including life and death instincts, were part of Freud's concept of unconsciousness. These hidden urges, considered unacceptable by the conscious mind, were believed to be shielded from awareness through defense mechanisms. Freud's personality theory saw the psyche structured into three parts: the id, ego, and superego, all developing at different stages in our lives. These are systems, not parts of the brain or in any way physical, but rather hypothetical conceptualizations of important mental functions. The basic dilemma of all human existence is that each element of the psychic apparatus makes demands upon us incompatible with the other two. Either conflict is inevitable. For example, the superego can make a person feel guilty if rules are not allowed. For example, the superego can make a person feel guilty if rules are not followed. When there is a conflict between the goals of the id and superego, the ego must act as a referee and mediate this conflict. The ego can deploy various defense mechanisms to prevent it from becoming overwhelmed by anxiety. The id is the primitive and instinctive component of personality. The id is a part of the unconscious that contains all the urges and impulses. The id is the impulsive and unconscious part of our psyche that responds directly and immediately to basic urges, needs, and desires. The personality of the newborn child is all id, and only later does it develop an ego and superego. Freud's ego is the rational part of the psyche that mediates between the instinctual desires of the id and moral constraints of the superego, operating primarily at the conscious level. The ego as that part of it which has modified by the direct influence of the external world. The ego is the only part of the conscious personality. It's what the person is aware of when they think about themselves, and what they usually try to project towards others. The ego develops to mediate between the unrealistic it and the real external world. It is the decision-making component of personality. Ideally, the ego works by reason, whereas the it is chaotic and unreasonable. The ego develops from it during infancy. The ego's goal is to satisfy its demand in a safe and socially acceptable way. In contrast to the it, the ego follows the reality principle as it operates in both conscious and unconscious mind. The ego operates according to the reality principle, working out realistic ways of satisfying its demands, often compromising and postponing satisfaction to avoid negative consequences of society. Third superego is the moral component of the psyche, representing internalized societal values and standards. It contrasts with its desire, guiding behavior towards moral righteousness and inducing guilt when standards aren't met. The superego incorporates the values and morals of society, which are learned from one's parents and others. It develops around 3 or 5 years around the phallic stage of psychosexual development. The superego develops during early childhood and is responsible for ensuring moral standards are followed. The superego operates on the morality principle and motivates us to behave in a socially responsible and acceptable manner. The superego is seen as the purveyor of rewards, feelings of pride and satisfaction, and punishments, feelings of shame and guilt, depending on which part the ego deal or conscious is activated. The superego is a part of the unconscious that is the voice of conscience, doing what is right, and the source of self-criticism. In Monkey Beach, we witness a lot of these it, ego, and superego circumstances. One of them is when Lisa's it, which is the grief, her grief on the loss of her family members, Uncle Mick and Mama O, and she wants to forget it all by coming into the city to get wasted, only to realize that her superego, in the form of Tap's ghost, tell her that it's better for her to come to terms with it and start her life anew. In the end, her ego follows her superego. She decides to go back to the village, to go back to school, to reconnect with family members, and basically starts her life anew. Now, this is the quotation. A catalog of the parties I remember, the amount I drank, the drugs I did would be pointless. It's a blur, a smudge. 2 years erased, down the toilet, blotto. The first year I managed to slog through a grade 10, but I gave up on grade 11 altogether and took off to Vancouver with people I thought were friends, but it turned out were not. I would have stayed that way for years if it wasn't for Tap. She came to me when I woke up lying face down on cool, sticky tiles. My mouth was dry, my head ached like a bugger. I wanted to stay where I was, but I wanted a cigarette worse. So I put my hands under me and pushed myself up. Lisa, some people have lives. Some people are moving on. Some people aren't wallowing in misery like they're the only ones on earth who've ever had someone die on them. Screw you, I said, stubbing out another cigarette. You almost got killed last night, you know that? I shrugged, too mad to speak. I'm not going to be able to help you anymore, Lisa. I just can't. She stood up. Don't need Pen or me to bail you out next time you get in trouble. There was no way to avoid it anymore. I decided to check out the next morning and go see Aunt Trudy. I didn't want to graduate after Jimmy did. I plowed through my assignments with an enthusiasm I usually reserve for partying. Now, this novel contains some really in-depth aspects that I cannot fit into just one video. It is a really interesting read with a very convoluted plot that is probably not for everyone, but it's worth it, and when you decide to blow your way into it to the end, it's very, very worth it. So I hope you'll give it a read and let me know what you guys think. Thank you.